Good day, it's April 6, 2026. Yesterday was Easter Sunday in the Christian world, and Pope Leo XIV celebrated the traditional Easter Mass in Vatican City's St. Peter's Square, addressing the Christian world with a message of love and peace. I'm Maribel Villanueva. Welcome to The Pulse.
And I'm Jessica Rolla. Welcome to this week's edition.
In an interview with the media during one of his public appearances at the Vatican, Pope Leo XIV called on U.S. President Donald Trump to end the war in Iran and promote peace in the region. However, according to multiple media outlets, there appears to be no clear endgame for Iran and no defined plan coming from the White House. Senator Chris Murphy, speaking on the Senate floor last week, criticized President Trump for lacking both a clear objective and an exit strategy regarding Iran. He stated that the current goal expressed by the White House is to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Senator Murphy questioned this rationale, asking, "Is that the reason we went to war? The Strait of Hormuz was open before we attacked Iran," he added. President Donald Trump recently addressed the situation surrounding the Strait of Hormuz, stating, "I have nothing to do with it. We will be leaving very soon, and if France or some other country wants to get oil or gas, they'll go through the Strait of Hormuz. They'll go right up there. We have nothing to do with it." Trump, who has criticized U.S. allies for their reluctance to provide greater support for the American military campaign against Iran, suggested that those nations should secure their own oil, emphasizing that it is not America's responsibility to safeguard the Strait of Hormuz. For the time being, gas prices worldwide continue to rise by cents per gallon each day as concerns over potential shortages persist.
Last weekend's No Kings rallies held in New York and other major cities, as well as in more than 3,000 localities simultaneously, were attended by an estimated 8 million people nationwide. New York and Washington, D.C. drew the largest crowds, but smaller No Kings rallies also took place in towns across all 50 states. The demonstrations were organized to express opposition to President Donald Trump and his frequent use of executive orders, which participants say have impacted the nation's economy, including through tariffs. A key concern among protesters was the conduct of ICE agents, who they claim operate masked without visible identification and with little accountability, raising alarm among many Americans.
As former military personnel, young activists and other progressives are running for office, healthcare workers are also making headlines running for federal office. Annie Andrews, a pediatric doctor in South Carolina, is among the Democrats in the primary running in the U.S. Senate seat, currently being held by Republican MAGA Lindsey Graham. Andrews recently posted a video on her campaign social media page about Lindsey Graham's alleged darkest secret.
We've all heard the rumors about Lindsey Graham, the whispers that circulate around Washington, D.C. and South Carolina, that he is a secret, a part of him that he wants to keep hidden. And then after all these years, he just comes out and says it.
The Iranian regime is on its knees. We're going to blow the hell out of these people.
Lindsey Graham is deeply and passionately in love with war.
We're marching through the world. Iran is going down.
Meanwhile, back in South Carolina, our infrastructure, our roads and bridges are crumbling. Our rural hospitals are closing. Our schools are underfunded and everything costs a fortune. And while South Carolina's kids fall further behind, Lindsey Graham says this.
I go back to South Carolina. I'm asking them to send their sons and daughters over to the Mideast.
And I don't know if you're a history buff, but Lindsey has always been this way.
I believe that Saddam Hussein is giving aid and comfort, training and assistance to al-Qaeda murderers, that he has weapons of mass destruction. He is lying when he says he doesn't.
I'm Dr. Annie Andrews. I'll show up for you. I'll fight for you. And if you send me to the U.S. Senate, I'll focus on issues that actually affect us here in South Carolina.
Go back to South Carolina. I'm asking them to send their sons and daughters over to the Mideast. Make Iran great.
Not send our kids to fight endless forever wars overseas. Learn more at drannieandrews.com.
MSNBC's political data analyst Steve Kornacki has shown that there remains 5 states at play in the midterm election, in which Democrats are poised to take back control of the U.S. Senate that is currently in hands of the Republicans by 3 seats.
In his recent polling data analysis last week, Kornacki showed a better than last month's probability of Democratic win to take back the Senate majority in the state of Texas, North Carolina, Ohio, Alaska, and the state of Maine. Winning the total of 5 seats will be more than sufficient to take back the Senate control. 3 Senate wins will not be enough because the Vice President, J.D. Vance, can break the tie as President of the Senate. 2 of these Senate races are being watched closely as likely big win State Representative James Tallarico for the state incumbent Senator John Cornyn, and in North Carolina, where the popular Democratic Governor Roy Cooper is running for a seat that will be vacated by the retiring Senator Thom Tillis. The other 3 where the Democratic candidates are leading in the polls are in the state of Maine, Alaska, and in Ohio, where the former Senator Sherrod Brown, who was defeated last year, has taken another chance to take another Senate seat that was vacated by J.D. Vance when he became vice president, but is currently being helped by an appointee, Senator John Husted.
The Supreme Court of the United States heard oral arguments last week in a case on birthright citizenship titled Trump versus Barbara. The case challenges an executive order issued by President Donald Trump that seeks to end U.S. citizenship for children born to undocumented immigrants, as well as for those born to tourists and individuals legally in the United States on temporary visas. On his first day in office, January 20, 2025, President Donald Trump sought to end birthright citizenship, a policy that has been in place for more than 125 years under the Citizenship Clause of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. The clause grants citizenship to nearly all individuals born in the United States, with limited exceptions such as children of foreign diplomats. The 14th Amendment Citizenship Clause was upheld by the Supreme Court of the United States in the landmark 1898 case, United States versus Wong Kim Ark. In that decision, the court ruled that Wong Kim Ark, who was born in San Francisco to Chinese citizen parents, was indeed a U.S. citizen. The ruling has since served as the foundation of birthright citizenship in the United States. Some countries follow the doctrine of jus soli citizenship based on place of birth, which is used in many South American nations. Others, like the Philippines, follow jus sanguinis, or citizenship by blood, typically determined by the nationality of a child's parents. During oral arguments last week in Trump versus Barbara, the American Civil Liberties Union represented Barbara and 2 other petitioners from the lower court case. The Trump administration appealed in an effort to lift a lower court ruling that had blocked the policy. Before the Supreme Court of the United States, Solicitor General John Sauer argued on behalf of President Donald Trump, while ACLU civil rights attorney Cecilia Wang represented Barbara.
But who is Barbara in Trump versus Barbara? Barbara is likely not her real name, but a pseudonym used in court records to protect her identity. She is reportedly an undocumented immigrant from Honduras who fears for her safety and that of her family due to threats from the gang Tren de Aragua. For this reason, the court allowed her to proceed under a pseudonym. At the time, President Donald Trump signed the executive order seeking to end birthright citizenship. She was pregnant and living in New Hampshire. 2 other petitioners are part of the consolidated case: Sarah, the daughter of a Taiwanese citizen living in Utah, and Matthew, the son of a Brazilian citizen living in Florida. So although oral arguments were heard last week, it may take months before the Supreme Court of the United States issues a decision. For now, the lower court's order blocking the executive action remains in effect. Let's take a commercial break. Please stay tuned for our world news when we come back. Welcome back to The Pulse. In a report from Al Jazeera, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has stated that the United States has done nothing punitive against the Cuban regime, claiming that the current humanitarian situation on the island predates recent measures by President Donald Trump's administration in the Caribbean. Rubio told Al Jazeera in an exclusive interview on Monday, which focused primarily on Iran, that the Cuban leadership was to be held responsible for the country's current problems. We tried explaining it to anyone who would listen, Rubio stated, that their economic structure does not work. It is utterly dysfunctional. It's just not a real system, and changing it requires changing the government. Rubio cited U.S. pressure on Venezuela to halt oil exports to Cuba following the military abduction of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro in January. We have done nothing punitive to the Cuban regime. They say we have, but we have not. The only thing that has changed for the Cuban regime is that they no longer receive free Venezuelan oil, Rubio remarked. They are no longer receiving subsidies. That is the only thing that has altered. The top U.S. diplomat made no mention of Trump's executive order in late January, which threatened sanctions against any country that supplied Cuba with oil. Washington has also imposed a decades-long trade ban on the island. On Sunday, President Donald Trump appeared to soften his stance on oil shipments to Cuba, while maintaining a broader pressure campaign against the island. Speaking to reporters, Trump said, "If a country wants to send some oil into Cuba right now, I have no problem, whether it's Russia or another country." He praised the military campaign against Venezuela and added, "And Cuba is next, by the way, but pretend I didn't say that, please." Rubio, for his part, disputed Cuban officials' allegations that blackouts on the island had increased as a result of the pressure campaign.
The BBC reported that, desperate for nourishment, drought-stricken Kenyans are turning to the gingerbread tree. Lotkoi Ibe, a farmer in northwestern Kenya, now owns only 5 skinny goats, down from 50 in the past. She has watched the rest of her livestock perish as grazing land in the region has dried up due to a prolonged drought. In her Turkana culture, where livestock are more than just a source of income and are vital to life itself, the loss of herd is a calamity that can be difficult to recover from. Although rain has recently begun to fall in many parts of the country, causing flash floods in some areas, officials warn that relief in Turkana will be slow. Specialists from the local National Drought Management Authority note that rainfall has been uneven, with some parts of Turkana receiving little to none, and that precipitation remains unpredictable and insufficient to offset the impact of the previous 2 failed rainy seasons. According to Oxfam, the nonprofit international relief organization, the drought ravaged a large area of East Africa, leaving over 26 million people facing extreme hunger in Kenya, Ethiopia, and Somalia. The impacts of the prolonged drought can be seen practically anywhere in Turkana County. Dry riverbeds cut through the countryside, and grazing pastures that once supported herd of goats, sheep, and camels are now bare. The animals have suffered, but their owners are also facing severe food shortages. Lotkoi Ibe, featured in the report, is in her early 50s, and her family considers eating twice a day a luxury. Most days, they manage only a single evening meal. She sometimes goes 5 days without a proper meal. In a weak, raspy voice, she told the BBC that when this happens, there is only one option left: traveling into the scrubland in search of sustenance. In the past, humanitarian organizations provided food help to people like Ibe. It is unclear why such resources have dried up, but it's possible that other areas are in greater need. These deliveries helped families get through the dry seasons. However, neither the government nor humanitarian groups have provided them with assistance in recent times. Hunger now affects everyone in her household. Ibe said her mother last ate a small lunch the day before and has had nothing since. With food supplies running critically low, Ibe is appealing to both country and national authorities for help. In Kakwanyang hamlet, 3 women sit in the shade of a neighboring tree, pounding wild brown fruit with hard, rough, lumpy shells. These fruits come from a duam palm, locally known as mikwamo, or the gingerbread tree. However, finding the fruit is not easy, making relief efforts even more challenging. Sometimes, hungry villagers wander for more than 3 hours through the bush before finding the trees.
Could the scarcity of food from relief organizations nowadays be attributed to the disappearance of USAID assistance that stopped in the second Trump administration? It could well be, because many of those assistance programs of USAID were in Africa.
It's just sad that the world is going hungry, even families in America. We're going to take a commercial break. Please stay with us for an interview with lawyer Alex Quag, who is a candidate for District Court Judge in Clark County, Nevada, when we come back.
Welcome back to The Pulse. With us now at our Film TV studios is Alex Quag, who is running for District Court Judge. And as we've been informing our audience overseas, state judges in the U.S. are elected, while only federal judges are appointed. So Alex, welcome to The Pulse.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
First, why don't you tell our viewers about yourself, your personal and professional background?
Sure. So my name is Alex Quag. I'm running for District Court Judge, Department 29, here in Clark County, Nevada. A little bit about myself. I'm a Filipino American. My mom, she was born in La Paz, Tarlac, and she grew up in Manila, but then she was working in Subic Bay and met my dad, who was a Marine. And so ultimately, when they met there, they fell in love, and she immigrated to the States with my dad, and they got married and everything. So it's great to have an immigrant mother from the Philippines. Ultimately, with my dad in the Marines, I moved around a lot when I was a kid, but then right before high school, he took a job at Nellis Air Force Base, and that's where I ended up here in Las Vegas. I grew up on the east side at that point. I went to El Dorado High School, and then I went to UNLV for my undergraduate degree, and I went to UNLV for my law school. A little bit professionally, before I started law school, I joined the Nevada Army National Guard, and I was an armor officer there, which deals with like tanks and cavalry. Then throughout law school, I was doing that Army National Guard job. Then after law school, I went active duty to the Army JAG Corps. And so in the Army JAG Corps, I did all sorts of different things. I did legal assistance, where I was helping soldiers with wills, different family law questions that they might have, or administrative law questions that they might have about the Army. And then I jumped right into doing prosecution for the Army. And so I did that for a while. Then my next assignment after that was being a defense attorney in the Army. So I defended soldiers who were accused of crimes in the Army. Ultimately, I got out of active duty Army in 2020. My wife and I, we just had our second baby. And
Congratulations.
so yes, thanks. So in 2020, we had our second baby, and it was pretty tough to raise the baby away from extended family and everything. So we moved back to Nevada, where our family was. And from there, I worked at the Nevada Court of Appeals, where I was a staff attorney and gained appellate law experience. And then I worked at the Carson City DA's office for a little bit, ultimately before moving down here. And now I'm working at the Clark County District Attorney's Office, where I'm a prosecutor. So through that, I've gained kind of a broad experience, both working as a prosecutor and criminal defense attorney, and with appellate experience as well.
Wow, that's impressive.
Sure.
You look so young.
You did a
So
lot
much
in,
already
what, 10 years?
accomplished.
Right.
So you're running for District Judge Department 29, and what kind of cases are heard on Department 29?
Sure. So Department 29 is one of the general jurisdiction district court departments. So the way district court is broken down, there's the family courts, and then the general jurisdiction courts, which here are civil and criminal dockets. They all fall under the umbrella of the 8th Judicial District Court. I'm running for Department 29, which again is general jurisdiction. It can hear criminal cases or civil cases. For the criminal cases, it can hear what's called gross misdemeanors or felonies. And then for civil cases, it would hear cases with matters where the dispute is involving more than $15,000. So it could be any broad range of that.
So you mentioned that you were in the Army JAG as a lawyer. Thank you for your service. And then later on became a prosecutor for the Clark County DA's office. Which of your experience has given you the most confidence in taking on the role of district court judge?
Sure. So I think it's a combination of that. I think with my experience in the Army JAG Corps, they teach you how to be a good trial attorney. And so through that program, I completed a number of trials and jury trials, both as a prosecutor and a criminal defense attorney. And I think seeing both sides, both prosecution and defense, you get more of a broad perspective there. What you also learn there is how to be quick and to adapt to learning different areas of the law. Then as I became a prosecutor in the civilian sector, ultimately that helped hone my trial experience. And district court is a trial level court, and so the judges should have trial experience going into it, and I have that broad trial experience, and I'm confident because of it.
Good answer. I'm really impressed with you. So within your scope of authority as a judge, what changes or improvements would you implement if elected?
Sure. So with the courts and judges aren't meant to decide on policy, because the policy is more for like legislatures to implement new changes in the law. But what judges do have control over is the process. So ultimately, what I want to instill in my courtroom is making sure that the courtroom is accessible to everyone. What I've seen previously from other judges in other courtrooms is judges who have been too dismissive of the parties in the courtroom, whether it's the regular people or the attorneys, or they would constantly delay cases and just continue them over and over, or even just not explain the procedures to the people in the courtroom. And ultimately what that does is harms people's belief in the legal system when they can't really access the courts. So I want to be part of that solution. I want to make sure cases are moving. I want to make sure that I'm treating everybody with dignity and respect in the courtroom. And I think that that's how we build a better belief in the court system.
Sounds really good.
Oh, that's amazing. And what do you expect too if this were to happen on your first day if elected as a new judge?
Sure. So on my first day as a new judge, I would make sure to really kind of set the tone for my courtroom. I think that, again, it is important to be treating everybody with dignity and respect in the courtroom. And part of that as well is holding people accountable. So I'd want to make sure that, again, we don't continue cases over and over. We only continue cases for good cause or items like that. And that's how we get to justice. That's how everybody can access justice, is when their cases move forward and they can finally get to a resolution that is warranted by the law.
Sounds good. So we're nearing the end of the show, and this is where we usually give you the floor. So what would you say to the voters out there?
Sure. So what I would say to the voters is, again, my name is Alex Quag. I'm running for District Court Judge, Department 29. And I believe very strongly in the rule of law, but I know that we can't have the rule of law unless everybody can access it. So again, I want to make sure that our cases move forward and everybody's treated in the courtroom with dignity and respect. And with my broad experience, both in life and professionally, I am confident that I can make that happen in the courtroom.
Alex Quag, candidate for District Judge, Department 29, Clark County, Nevada. Thank you so much for talking to Maribel and I. Good luck on your race.
Thank you guys so much.
And to our viewers, I'm Jessica Rolla. Until next week, thank you for watching.
And I'm Maribel Villanueva. God bless your week.